Coming up on Oakdale Update, we pay tribute to longtime Oakdale Fire Chief Jeff Anderson, who recently retired after 41 years of service. District 622 School Superintendent Christine Tucci Osorio will join me to talk about plans for the upcoming school year. Plus, we'll preview some upcoming events taking place in the city. Stay tuned, Oakdale Update is straight ahead. Hello and welcome to Oakdale Update. I'm your host, Frank Orsello. This is the City of Oakdale's news and information program about your community. Longtime Fire Chief Jeff Anderson recently retired after serving the community for over 41 years. Chief Anderson made a lasting impression on the department he leaves behind. Take a look.
I just want to say on behalf of the members of the Oakdale Fire Department, we want to congratulate you on 41 years service to the citizens of Oakdale and the community. You've been a tremendous leader, mentor, and friend, not only to me, but the entire organization, and we truly appreciate that. We wanted to put a little tribute together, kind of wish you a farewell and a happy retirement, and we've got some other members that would like to wish you farewell and say a few things as you go forward.
Your leadership and service to this community has been unmatched by anybody else I've ever seen. And I just want to say I appreciate you so much for giving me my start in public safety and allowing me to also serve the citizens of Oakdale.
It's been a pleasure to get to know you over the last almost 2 years of my career here.
I want to thank you for everything that you've taught me throughout the years. It's been an honor to work for you for the past 13 years, and I can't thank you enough.
I remember moving from White Bear to Oakdale back in 2005 because I want to be a part of the best department in the county and possibly in the state, and it's because of your leadership that our department is like that.
Thanks for the last 20 years that I've been working with you. It's been great.
This has been a dream of mine for so long that I am so happy that you gave me the opportunity.
You've taught me and a lot of other folks at the fire department a lot, and I'll never forget to make sure I always have duct tape and zip ties with me at all times.
Personally, I'd like to thank you for everything you've done behind the scenes for all of us firefighters. The negotiations, the commitment to keep the paid-on-call model alive, and just everything you've done that most people don't see.
I have to say, in my 37 plus years of being in the workforce, you are by far the best boss I've ever had. It has been such an honor to work for you and so much fun to watch this department grow by leaps and bounds under your amazing leadership.
Good luck in your retirement.
Congrats on 41 years.
It's well deserved, and congratulations.
Thank you for your time here at the city.
I hope you have a blast in retirement.
Wish you all the best in your future endeavors.
It's been a privilege and an honor.
Thank you so much for your service, Chief.
Hope you and Kay have a great future.
I appreciate your tutelage throughout my 20 years here.
Happy retirement.
Hopefully enjoy camping and spending time with your family.
Enjoy your retirement, you deserve it.
Again, thank you. We appreciate everything you've done. You've been a tremendous leader and wish you the best of luck in the future. Congratulations.
Welcome back to Oakdale Update. I'm now joined by District 622 School Superintendent Christine Tucci Osorio. to discuss plans for the upcoming school year. Christine, thanks for joining us on Oakdale Update. We've got so much to talk about that I hope we got enough time.
Always a pleasure, Frank. Great to be back.
Okay. All right, we'll start out by tell us about yourself, your background and that sort of thing.
Sure. So my background, I grew up in southeastern Minnesota, a small town called Rolling Stone, Minnesota. My family was a transplant from St. Louis, Missouri. Grew up in a small town and went to college in Duluth at UMD.
Wow.
Then I joined the Peace Corps after college. Went to the Central Pacific and worked on teaching English as a second language. Landed back in St. Paul schools. I worked there for 19 years. I was a teacher, and then I was an assistant principal and a principal. And last job I had there was chief academic officer. And so this is now my 6th year as superintendent here in District 622.
6 years you've been here?
Yes.
Oh.
Time flies, doesn't it?
I know it. Is that an elected position or?
The superintendency?
Yeah.
No, it is not, but you're hired by your school board.
That's right.
So in our district, we have 7 school board members, and they do the search, and they do the interview process, gathering community input, and they select their candidate.
That's right, and there were several that we went through for you. Good for you, good for you. Okay, so let's talk about the remodeling program that's going on now, even as we speak. Go ahead, tell us about, let's see, we've got Skyview, Eagle Point, and Carver, and then Tartan, and what else? Weaver and John Glenn.
Pretty much almost every building's getting remodeled.
Okay.
But so we, as you know, last year our district passed a facilities bond referendum. It was the first time we'd passed one of these since in 25 years, since 1994, I believe.
And it was pretty overwhelming too, wasn't it? Wasn't it pretty well received?
It was very well received, and I think part of the reason why is because it had taken us so long to do it that a lot of old debt had come off, so we could replace it. And the impact to the average homeowner was only $5 a month. And I'm very pleased to say we've kept that promise with regard to this bond referendum. In fact, it's been under that because we've been able to get some really good interest rates on those bonds and increasing property values in the district with corporate businesses that are growing as well.
Okay, so let's go Skyview and Eagle Point. You're working on those right now, I think, aren't
Well,
they?
let me just back up. We finished Castle and Richardson were our first 2 projects. Those we finished with money before we passed. They were started before we passed that bond referendum.
Oh.
The next ones that went under construction were John Glenn Middle School and Carver Elementary. Those are deep into construction phases. And as well as Skyview Middle School is underway right now. Alongside that, we have 2 new elementary schools being built. One is a replacement for Eagle Point. We're building a new property on the building on the same property. A lot of research has shown that that's actually more cost effective than trying to renovate the old building. And then on the Maplewood Middle School site, we're building a new elementary school there, and we'll eventually be tearing down the Maplewood Middle School building so that we can have just the elementary on that site. So those 2 projects are well into the planning phase.
So the middle school is going to be gone? I mean, is
It will. We'll go from 3 middle schools to 2 middle schools.
Is that right?
Yep.
Is that, and why is that?
Well, there's a couple reasons for it. Number one, that will help us. People at Maplewood Middle School have always had to split between Tartan and North. This allows our middle school track to stay in line. So kids who go to Skyview will go to Tartan, and those who go to John Glenn will go to North, and then there won't be this splitting of cohorts.
Yeah. Excellent idea.
Yep.
I think my son, he ended up at John Glenn and he ended up at Tartan.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just kind of out of the
And a
district.
lot of people have, you have your friends you grow up with, but it also allows us to put more resources into 2 buildings. Middle schools and high schools are very expensive, and to have a couple that are a little bit bigger, but we can pour more into them is much more cost effective than trying to remodel 3 of those at the same time.
Oh, good idea. I did go to the open house at Castle School. What a beautiful
Isn't
building.
it amazing?
You guys did such a good job.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of input on that too, wasn't there?
Absolutely. Every project we've done, we have staff user groups, we have community input sessions. We do a flyer out to all the neighbors that live around that school so they can come in and have some input to it. But lots and lots of planning goes into it. And students have voice in it as well.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I didn't know that. How so?
Well, we're having, even right now, as I mentioned to you when we chatted last week, that we're starting the planning right now for Tartan and North High. We've had meetings with the high school students. We've got groups of students who are helping us to put their input into things they currently like about their schools, things they wish were different, and how they want their school to feel for them. And they've been helping us as one of the user groups that helps us plan, meeting with the architects directly.
Really?
Yep.
What a wonderful experience for those kids,
yes.
huh? Geez. You might end up getting some architect students
I
coming
sure
out of
hope
this.
so. It's a pretty interesting process.
Yeah. So about how many kids are involved in that program?
Well, we have groups that we meet with all kinds of different surveys and things like that. So all the students will have some voices into it. But right now we're working with about 20 kids at each high school as kind of a core group.
Geez, that's great.
Yep, yep.
And then you work with the teachers too?
Oh, yes.
For the
All
remodeling
of the
plan?
teachers are involved. So when we start talking about the social studies wing, all the social studies teachers help to plan that. They also have input to the broader building, but we meet with each department, and then we also meet with the whole staff as a group as well throughout every phase of the planning.
Oh, that's good.
Yep.
That's good. And then with the architects and all that, and I think the architect you got was, they do this, don't they? This is their,
Yep.
they specialize in
They do schools. That's exactly
Schools.
what they do, yep.
Yeah. You want to tell us a little bit about that architect firm? It's,
Yeah, so we've been working with 2 different firms. So we've worked with LHB Architects. They oversaw Castle and Richardson. They're overseeing Carver and the John Glenn remodel. And we have Wold Architects working on the other projects. So we kind of have 2 groups we're working with, which has been really great too. But that's been really fun to get the different, the different flavors of them. Both have lots of experience in the school settings, and so it's been really great to have that team.
The Castle School is just absolutely
Yep.
wonderful.
Yep.
I wish I was 5 years old. I could start school all over again.
Yep, and that one was designed by LHB Architects.
Oh, it was?
Yep.
Is that right? Oh, they did just a fabulous
Yes.
job. All right, so everything was going along just fine, and then we got hit by COVID-19.
Yes, we did.
Oh, my goodness. So did it hit at the end of the school year? March, was it? Or
March.
March? Okay, so what was the first things that you had to do?
Well, we were a district that had one of our earlier spring breaks. A lot of the school districts around us hadn't started spring break, but there's a few of us in the East Metro, Stillwater, South Washington County, and us, Roseville, several that were on spring break right when that governor's announcement was just coming out. So, we had to thankfully our governor and our Department of Education put together 2 weeks planning time for schools. Think about this, taking a 200-year-old education system and changing the delivery model in 2 weeks' time.
Jeez.
Well, our district was not a district that was a one-to-one, meaning every child had a technology device. So we were a district that we had tried to pass a technology levy a couple of years ago, a few years back, and it didn't pass.
What does that mean?
Meaning that you go to the voters and say, can we add on a few extra dollars to our referendum to pay for extra technology? And we did not pass that the last time we went out for that in 2016. So we were working our way up towards having enough devices, but we did not. So we scrambled to put together the laptops and devices that we had, and then 3M Foundation stepped in and really saved the day. They gave us a $450,000 grant to help us finish meeting the needs of our students. So that was amazing. So yeah, pulling all of that together was quite something, and then trying to get everybody connected. Internet access was a really big issue for our families. And so we also had to invest in mobile hotspots to help some of the families get connected and whatnot. So that was a big challenge. But the most beautiful thing about it was our teachers really pulled together and really collaboratively planned together to build those units of instruction and their communication plans. It was just amazing.
So how does that work in terms of, what's the difference between doing it electronically as compared to in-person teaching? I mean, it's got to be
Well,
huge.
I'll tell you, it's just that interactivity of being able to be on, in front of a class. You know how it is. Teachers, they have their art, right?
Sure.
They bounce off the students, and to have to be remote is really difficult. Because we didn't have the devices right away for everybody, we started off delivering packets to the students every 2 weeks in the elementary level. And that was, that's a lot of paper, pencil activity and not as engaging. But
So who was doing the delivery? Teachers?
teachers, our bus drivers, they were running those buses around delivering food and packets and things to families. It was quite an operation. So
speaking
great.
of that, the food now, they still have food programs, don't they, for families, for kids and that?
Yes, in fact, during the end of the school year and throughout the summer, we have had a food program that allows every child ages 18 and under to get a free meal every day. Now, what we're waiting for right now, the legislation that made it free for everybody, funded through federal funds, is set to end. So we're waiting to find out if that's going to be extended or if we're going to have to go back to people paying for those meals. And we know with so many layoffs and people losing jobs, that's not always easy to do. So we're kind of waiting to hear what's going to happen for this fall yet.
So where does that food come from?
Well, I tell you what, our nutrition service program, one of the challenging things, they order from your bulk vendors for food companies,
Cisco
right?
and that
Cisco
sort
and
of
all that.
yeah.
But I'll tell you what, one of the things that's been challenging for them is to get the grab and go items, right? Things you can package up and send home with families that will last for a while. It's much easier to cook a pot of pasta and cook up some sauce and serve it all together hot to kids. It's less expensive. It's easier to get different grocery items. There's a real shortage right now among nutrition service programs everywhere for the grab and go items because so many of the food's been distributed out to the home. You need something that's gonna last for a bit, be less perishable. So that's been a challenge for us right now. But they've been shopping around to find the best vendors to help with that.
And again, how is that paid for?
So that's paid through federal funds. It wasn't entirely reimbursed, but part of the money that came through our federal program, the CARES Act, for the COVID-19 pandemic has been helping to pay for some of that.
Okay. All right. So how does the COVID-19, how's it going to affect the opening of the school year?
Goodness.
Oh,
I will tell you, today is August 10th. I say that because if this airs later, people may go, wait a minute, it's changed. So just in case, it could change. But right now, we've been collecting surveys from families, surveys from students. The state program has us looking at county data. So the COVID infection rate for your county. And our school district, District 622, which is North St. Paul, Maplewood, Oakdale, and part of Woodbury, we're in 2 counties. We're in Ramsey County and Washington County. And so we're watching the data for both of those counties to guide our decisions. Now, according to the data right now, the data from the counties and the state guidance would say that we should be opening in a hybrid model, part-time, students in school part-time but not full-time. The reason not full-time is because we don't want them all there at once, because then you can't socially distance them 6 feet apart. So that's the plan we're trying to make. But there's a lot of families, if they work, they really want to see their kids back in school, especially elementary age students. There's a lot of students who don't do well with distance learning. They're better off with their teachers in front of them. And yet we have a lot of employees with underlying health conditions who are very concerned about coming back. So there's all these balancing.
You mean your employees that work for the school
right,
district?
The teachers, the paraprofessionals, nutrition workers, bus drivers, lots of people have health conditions too. So trying to balance the needs of everybody is never an easy thing to do right now.
Oh, gosh.
Yes.
Oh, okay, so how about, one of the things is the transportation.
Yes.
How are you going to work the transportation?
Well, right now our guidance is that our buses cannot they must remain under 50% capacity. So obviously we can't run our regular bus routes. We've got to run them on an alternating system. So what we're planning to do, ultimately we want to get to a hybrid system where students come to school maybe a couple days a week, but they're home the other 3. What our plan in the district is going to be is to actually keep everybody home for the first few weeks, just to get used to the distance learning, make sure the technology is working, the internet's working, everybody's connected into that routine. Then we're going to start bringing students back in groups. And with busing, we're going to have to bring them back with less kids on a bus, so not everybody can come every day. We're putting time between the routes so that we can sanitize every seat on the bus before the next group gets picked up.
Wow.
It's a lot of planning.
What about the bus drivers? I mean, they're doing double shifts then, or how?
Well, they're just condensing. We're going to have a little bit shorter school day for the kids when they come in person. So normally we're in school 6.5 hours. We're planning to have the students in school about 4 hours. So they're going to run the morning routes, and by the time those get done, they'll be almost ready to start picking them back up again because it's a little bit shorter day.
Well, that's kind of a better thing for the bus drivers, isn't it?
In a way, yeah.
I mean, really, because I know they got the early morning run.
They always have a split shift.
Yeah,
yep.
Split shift, and they have to sit around and wait and all that time.
Exactly.
But now this is going to cost us a little bit more money too, isn't it?
Well, part of the thing, yes, because our drivers are having to run more routes to get the kids there, but because we're only bringing them in half the time, that part won't necessarily, but what's happening, the money cost is coming in with how much time we're having to take, longer time between the routes, the sanitizing of those buses, the staffing just to set up, like when children arrive at school, how are we going to screen the temperature checks for everybody? Who's going to manage that? We are definitely going to be short of custodial help for cleaning buildings because we're going to need to sanitize all day long into the evenings. And every district like us around us is going to be looking for hiring extra people to help with those. And that's a big cost as well. Definitely the technology is continuing to be a cost. Because, it's one thing to have the laptops and the devices, but to continue the internet support is very expensive. And And the food costs are more expensive when we need to buy grab-and-go items rather than, like I mentioned earlier,
Sure.
the pasta or the rice bakes and things you can make in person. It's a lot more expensive to be doing the grab-and-go kinds of foods.
Okay, so you had a lot of input from teachers and parents and I don't know who else.
Surveys of staff, surveys of parents, surveys of teachers, surveys of students. And then we went back to our staff a couple different times and surveyed them. Now, what do you think of this revised plan? Just trying to get feedback and input. Yeah.
Are you coordinating with other parts of the country or other school districts?
Yes.
I mean, how's that going?
I will tell you, I'm a part of a big network, many networks of superintendents. One of them is the metropolitan area schools. We meet every Friday. We have been for a number of weeks. Just what's everybody's plan? What are you looking at? What are your plans looking like? Sharing ideas. I have a text chat in my phone of about 12 superintendents. We text every day.
Really?
What are you guys doing? We have a lot of connections that way. We're also very connected to the State Department of Education. Even the commissioner, you know, I text her plenty of times to ask her what does she think about this and checking in with that. And then inside of our district, we've formed a team called the COVID response team. And as you know, in school districts, we have a lot of different union bargaining groups, right? So it's not just teachers. We've got the clerical group, you know, the school secretaries. We've got the food service, the nutrition workers, that's a union group. Our school nurses, our paraprofessionals, the teachers' aides, the custodians and the bus drivers, they're a union group. So our principals are a union. So we've got a team that we've built that has representatives with a couple of people from every bargaining group so that they can all have a voice. Because what we don't want to do is put a plan together that says, oh, well, we all plan this, and then have, you know, the nutrition workers say, that's not going to work with with what we're trying to do here. We all have to have a voice at the table in terms of all of the logistics. You know, in a school with social distancing, think about this. How do you get every child to get their food from the cafeteria and get back to their classroom without coming in 6 feet of another child? Jeez. That is a nightmare of a planning. So we have to map out, you know, hallways are going to be one way going this direction and one way coming this direction, and we're going to have this rotation, and it's all very orchestrated and a lot of planning.
Well, I wonder how are kids going to be acting up?
I don't know.
How can they? They can't. I mean, they're going to be so controlled.
Well, I think there's going to be, that's part of why we have smaller numbers at a time, right? So instead of, and the families even once we start bringing some groups back in smaller groups, families have the choice to stay home and continue online learning. If they choose that, they still get to do that. And we've done a survey of our families that shows, you know, but 20, 25, 30%, depending on the grade level, are interested in that. So even when we bring back half the class at a time, we'll have even less than half the class because you'll have a number of kids who just stay home with the online learning. And so once we figure out all those numbers, I had a principal text me, we just emptied out a classroom and put the desks all 6 feet apart. We can have a maximum of 12 students in this classroom. And what happens if 13 show up? And so we have to brainstorm all those pieces as well.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Geez. Now, if some of the parents choose to keep the kids home and teach them at home, now does that cut into the budget?
Normally it would, but in these COVID times, the state has said they will continue to fund us if those families stay enrolled in our schools on the roster, and we are providing the educational materials and experience. Where we would lose funding is if a family up and chooses to enroll in a whole different school district. That's where we were, or if they decide to officially homeschool. Now, in the online version right now, during these COVID times, the state is allowing us to continue to collect funding if that child stays connected to their teacher here in this district and they are still enrolled in our online program and not leaving to go to another district or another private school or something else.
Okay. Now, kids going to private schools, now that's a whole different story, right?
Yes.
How's that working out?
Well, I'll tell you, private schools are not held to the same guidelines that the state puts out for public schools. And the reason for that is that they don't receive public funding, so they don't have to follow all the same public rules that are put out by the state in many regards. I will say locally, a number of private schools are offering full-time in-person school for their children.
Yes.
And there are families that absolutely want that, and they are flocking to private schools that offer that.
So actually some kids are leaving the public schools to
They
go
are.
to the...
They are.
Are they really?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
So there's an experiment to see how that turns out.
Well,
huh?
I guess so. We'll see what happens, you know, and You know, and you know, everybody's got unique needs and interests and wishes, and you know, we're juggling you know, the needs of our families, but also the needs of our employees, and trying to fit together a plan that will work. So
Okay, so I know you had a ton of meetings with all these different unions and everybody, all representatives and all that, and surveys and all that. That must have been a logistic nightmare to meet. I bet you haven't had time to scratch your nose in the last...
Not at all. We've had meetings on Saturdays, Sunday night. Today is Monday. We had a meeting with all of our principals last night that went from about 7:30 to 9 p.m. online.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's just, we have to figure this out, and there's so many layers to it.
Wow. Okay, so a lot of the costs now, as we mentioned before, the laptops, for some kids have to have laptops.
Yep.
And then hotspots and that kind of thing. So how are you working that? How do you work that out?
So some of the funding that's come from the federal government, this is that CARES funding that's helping, it's a stimulus package that was sent out to schools through the federal government. That's been helpful. We've been able to use those funds to help pay for additional laptops and devices, hotspots. The 3M Foundation donation has been incredibly helpful for us. But that funding from the federal government is also helping us to buy PPE, the personal protective equipment, right?
Yeah.
So we've had to buy plexiglass shields to go at every reception desk, right? All the entrances to the school buildings. Lots of masks, because if we're going to require them, we also have to provide them. We know there are some teachers, like if you're a speech and language teacher or a deaf and hard of hearing teacher, we've bought the clear masks. It's a mask, but it's got to clear because you need to be able to see the mouth of the teacher.
Oh, my goodness.
We've had to buy sanitizing stations that you put at the entrances to the buildings. You know those stickers that you put on the floor? You see them in grocery stores?
Yep.
We bought a whole bunch of those. Social distancing stickers
Yeah.
and all of that kind of stuff. A lot of infrared thermometers so that we can do temperature checks as screenings of staff and students. So, and those aren't cheap either. So lots of money that, the money that we've gotten has been well spent and beyond, for sure.
Okay, so we're running out of time here, but summarize what is going to happen when school starts, whenever it starts, in June?
Well, yeah, in June. Who knows at
whenever
this
it starts.
And I say this saying it could change, because one of the things we're doing is watching our data every single week. We get an update every week on what our data looks like for Ramsey County and for Washington County. So we're paying attention very closely to that. But our plan at this point in time is going to be that we're going to start our students when they start back in school. For us is August 31st. They're going to start with distance learning, meaning online learning, and that's going to be all grades. Once we have everybody established with their tech devices and on the internet and all connected, and in the elementary grades, we're going to bring families in one at a time to meet the teacher, have their conference, make sure that everybody's technology is working for them. In the middles and high schools, we're going to bring in students who maybe are new to the country, learning English, have a meeting with them, or students with special needs, bring them in, make sure we get everybody in small groups started. Then we're going to just, after a few weeks of doing that, if the data shows our COVID numbers are not continuing to rise and things are getting stable, then we're going to start bringing students in part-time. So that's the students would come, would divide the classes into A group and B group. Half of them come one day, the other half come the next day. And so what we're doing is holding off on bringing anybody into a regular schedule until we have a few weeks under our belt with this new plan to see how it's working, how the COVID numbers are looking. Also, how is our staff doing? Because if we have too many staff with health problems and inabilities to be in front of students, that's going to affect our plans too. So we're going to take a look at all that data, but we're going to start slow. We're going to get the distance learning and the online learning going, and then we're going to start bringing in our groups of students.
Jeez. Well, your many hours a day is not over with yet, is it?
No, it's not, because that could change we're constantly monitoring the data to see how that looks.
Because it's all new. Everything is new, and you're starting all over
By
again.
mid to late September, though, you should see our buses rolling again on the streets.
That's good.
That's the hope anyway.
Yeah. Well, Christine, we're out of time, but I want to thank you so much for filling us in on what's going on, and obviously you know what's going on. You're in charge.
Well, it's always a pleasure.
Now, let me ask you this. Are you still happy that you're the superintendent of 622?
Absolutely. I will tell you, these are very difficult days right now,
sure.
but they are for everybody.
I'm sure.
And not just in the education industry. It's in every industry right now.
Exactly right. Everybody is hurting.
We have a really great community here and really great teachers, principals, parents. So I feel very, very blessed to be here in this community.
Well, but everybody's being affected by this. Everybody.
Everyone is.
So, okay. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. That's all we have time for this month on Oakdale Update. We leave you with a list of events taking place in the city. For everyone at the City of Oakdale, thanks for watching.